Okay, Rich, we'll start with you this time and keep going in the same order. I talk to a lot of small businessmen on an almost daily basis, and they complain about a lot of problems and taxes and that sort of thing. But one of the things they often say is the regulatory environment in Ohio. Now, I realize attorneys general don't pass regulations. They're a function of the legislature, but is it your job to enforce regulations that are statewide? And just as a matter of opinion, do you think there are too many of them? Do you think these businessmen have a legitimate concern that there are too many regulations?
I think, Jim, there are too many from the federal government and from the state government. That's why, in terms of our hotline, our consumer helpline, we have put that line on the side of small businesses and not only taking complaints against businesses. We also have instituted a business roundtable where the representatives at NFIB and the Chamber of Commerce and all come into my office regularly to talk about their issues and see what we can do to stand up for them and help make sure that state government is treating them fairly, sensibly, and not going off on the rails as people sometimes do when they regulate. I have to go back and respond to Mike DeWine. He keeps raising these other issues. In terms of Mark Dan, Mike never said a word about Mark Dan. Never a word until he became a candidate for this office. Yeah, but you never said a word about Bob. You never said a word about Bob Taft when he was convicted of crimes in office, who he endorsed and you endorsed back and forth. You never said a word about Tom Noe for his scandals in office. So to say to me,
sounds like a great idea to vote for a third-party candidate.
I haven't interrupted anybody else. Let me finish. It seems to me that you're grandstanding on this issue when you had your opportunities and you never took them. I, in fact, signed a letter and helped push Mark Dan out of office, and we got rid of him. And I then ran for the office at a time when you and anybody else could have run, when we had the hard work to do to clean up the office. That's what we did. Okay, so we have cleaned up corruption in the state, and I have reformed this office and improved this office. All you're doing is talking about it way after the fact when you said nothing at the time. So that's a little too much from you.
Okay, Doctor, on the regulatory aspect of
well, I
think
office. This shows a difference of the perspective between an attorney and someone with training in public health and public policy. That an attorney would want to fix things, to make things whole, to clean up the mess. But from a public policy and public health standpoint, we want to have prevention. We want to prevent the problems. We want to prevent the litigation. We should have our attorneys, instead of searching out for law enforcement, we should have the attorneys of the Attorney General's office help to build safe harbors, so that our businesses know what they can do to keep out of trouble in the first place. And through having clear plans, outlines for how you can run your business and not have to worry about getting that call from the Inspector General's office. It's the same thing as when you're on the highway. People should know what speed they can go, and they don't have to slow down when they see a trooper there. When they see a trooper, they should feel a sense of safety and security that this is going to help keep the highway safe. Not they're going to give me a ticket to raise money for the state. And our businessmen should feel the same way. They should feel that our regulatory agencies are there to make our lives better, to make businesses function better, to improve the marketplace, not to catch them on details, not to give them trouble, not to give them paperwork.
Okay, Mike, on that subject?
We are overregulated in this state. Small business particularly is overregulated. I talked to businesses time and time again who told me about problems that they have had. When I'm Attorney General, we will enforce the law, but our first reaction will not be to file a lawsuit. We will rein in, I will rein in the bureaucrats, because I will be the lawyer for the bureaucracy. Talking about small business and overregulation, which is a killer. Another thing that's a killer of small business is the crime problem. The Attorney General's job is to work and support local law enforcement. We have a serious problem at the crime lab run by the incumbent Attorney General. He's given several different figures about the delays, but I will tell you, as I go around the state of Ohio and talk to prosecutors anecdotally off the record, they tell me time and time again, we've got 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9-month delay in DNA. We've got huge delays in getting fingerprints. We've got huge delays in getting drugs tested. The real world application of that is when you wait, as the Attorney General's office did for close to a year, when a young lady was raped in Marietta, and wait almost a year to get that DNA back. What that means is that rapist is out loose. And it's been my experience as a former prosecutor, and I know Richard has not been a prosecutor, but my experience is any prosecutor can tell you time and time again, these people who are loose, who are sex offenders, they will commit crime after crime after crime. We have crimes committed in the state of Ohio every day that are being committed because the state crime lab, run by the current Attorney General, does not do their job. Even taking his own, one last thing, even taking his own statistics, their own statistics, they have well over 60 cases, serious cases, that are over 6 months old and getting the evidence back to the local law enforcement agencies.
Robert, on that subject?
You know, it appears that Captain Obvious has made an appearance to say that regulations are too much and need to be cut back, and that's great that both Republicans and Democrats can recognize Captain Obvious when he enters the room. But again, here we've got the problem in that these guys are all talk and no action. It's a bunch of hot air. It's a bunch of rhetoric that's used to get elected for office. When we looked at this past 2 years, right, we've had a Democrat House, a Democrat governor, and when Mr. Cordray, in a very powerful office of Attorney General, had the opportunity to use his influence to cut down on regulations, where was he? MIA, missing in action. It's nowhere to be found, right? And when we look at a bunch of hot air, you know, on behalf of Mr. DeWine, he talks about, well, the first thing I'll do is file a lawsuit against the federal government on this health care issue when he gets into office. Well, you know what? Why wait to get into office to do something about it? I would challenge both of these gentlemen to sign on to the health care freedom petition, to actually do something, to lift a finger. And, you know, I understand Mr. DeWine's got quite a network of activists. If he had so much as lifted a finger on this health care freedom amendment, we'd have it on the ballot here in 2010. As it turns out, he's refused to participate. We've got to continue the work, and we'll go forward and have it on the ballot in 2011. It's time for action.
Sometimes the things we take for granted suddenly become really important. I always thought Lakeland was for someone else. Then I lost my job. I realized I needed to learn more in today's job market. I needed Lakeland. Lakeland gets you ready for good new jobs. It'll fit your schedule and you can afford it. Lakeland really comes through for us. In Lake County, opportunity starts here at Lakeland.